I'm 78 years old, and I need to tell you something that nobody told me when I was your age. For most of my life, I thought being a good woman meant saying yes to everyone. My husband, my children, my parents, my friends, my boss. I thought that's what love looked like. I thought that's what strength looked like.
In the deepest, most suffocating reaches of the Amazon rainforest, where the canopy is so thick that sunlight fears to touch the earth, a story was unfolding, one that would end in a way no one could have predicted. The humidity in the air was so heavy that every breath felt like a physical burden, and sweat poured from bodies like a soul trying to escape a terrified vessel. Jeff, a man whose eyes held nothing but the cold shimmer of greed, stood at the bow of the boat, staring into the murky, tea-colored water. To him, this jungle wasn't a natural wonder. It was a marketplace where every tree and every animal carried a price tag. But did he know that nature has its own set of rules? Did he realize that when a man crosses the boundaries of his own avarice, the path back is often sealed forever? Lenny and the other circus performers, accustomed to the vibrant lights and the rhythmic roar of applause, felt like ghosts in this dark world. The terror etched onto their faces was proof that they hadn't come here by choice, but were lured by the golden, hollow dreams Jeff had spun for them. The river water, which appeared deceptively calm and silent, was actually a graveyard for ancient, horrific secrets. Its color was a bruised, muddy brown, making it impossible to see what lurked inches beneath the surface. Billy Young, the silent and mysterious hunter, whose facial lines were as tangled as an old map, sat in the corner of the boat, tracing the edge of his blade with a callous thumb. His eyes weren't fixed on the surface. They were searching for the movement beneath, as if he were attuned to a frequency invisible to the others. Was Billy Young truly their guide, or had he led this group here as a grand sacrifice to something primeval? The air was thick with a pungent stench, a sickening cocktail of rotting vegetation, damp moss, and the metallic tang of dead fish, signaling an approaching storm of the soul. The constant drone of mosquitoes was a needle against the eardrums, but for Jeff, none of this mattered. His mind was a whirlpool of calculations, centered on the massive fortune he would receive for capturing the legendary crimson anaconda alive. As the boat drifted into a section of the jungle where the tree branches arched over the water like a skeletal ribcage, the temperature dropped with haunting suddenness. This was the place the local tribes referred to as the Cradle of Death. The chirping of birds ceased instantly, and even the distant cries of monkeys fell into an eerie silence. A stillness descended, a silence more terrifying than any scream. Lenny gripped the splintered edges of the boat with trembling hands. She felt as if thousands of unseen eyes were watching them from behind the emerald curtains of the vines. Was it just her imagination, or was something truly there? Suddenly, from the depths of the greenery, came a sound that curdled their blood. It was a low, heavy slithering, the sound of something massive and weighty dragging itself over wet earth and through the reeds. "He's here," Billy Young whispered, his voice so devoid of emotion that it turned Jeff's excitement into a momentary shiver of dread. But greed is a drug that blinds the wise. Jeff tightened his grip on the heavy netting and signaled his team to take their positions, ignoring the primal instinct screaming at him to turn back. A ripple appeared on the water's surface. At first, it looked like a small fish breaking the tension, but then that ripple transformed into a wake, a bow wave moving steadily toward the boat. A gargantuan shadow moved beneath the water, its length defying logic. The crimson anaconda, a creature of myth whose size was spoken of in hushed tones by the locals, was now directly in front of them. When its head finally breached the surface, it felt as though a small vessel had emerged. Its skin was a deep bruised crimson, marked with black spots that looked like ancient runes. Its eyes, glowing like two embers pulled from a dying fire, were devoid of human emotion, yet they possessed an ancient intelligence that understood the exact dynamic between predator and prey. The serpent flicked its long, forked tongue, tasting the metallic scent of human fear in the air. Jeff's breath hitched. His body was soaked in sweat, but his eyes remained locked on his prize, oblivious to the fact that the hunter had already become the hunted. At that moment, as the tension reached a breaking point, Billy Yang revealed his true colors. With a chilling serpentine smile, he kicked a heavy crate to one side, intentionally upsetting the boat's balance. The vessel lurched violently, and Lenny lost her footing, sliding toward the edge of the water with a sharp gasp. Instead of reaching out to save her, Jeff turned his fury toward Billy Yang, only to find himself staring down the barrel of a pistol. "Your journey ends here, Jeff." Billy's words were like shards of ice. With a swift movement, he sliced the mooring rope and leaped toward a small, concealed motorboat he had prepared in advance. The betrayal was so sudden and so clinical that no one had time to react. Billy didn't just want the snake. He wanted the clean slate that only the death of his witnesses could provide. He drifted back, a spectator to the carnage he had orchestrated. Now, the boat was left with nothing but helpless performers and a man consumed by his own folly. The anaconda accelerated. It no longer moved like a wave, but like an arrow shot from a bow. As it reached the boat, it delivered its first strike. The sheer power of its muscular body slamming into the wooden hull sounded like a string of firecrackers exploding. Lenny's screams echoed through the canopy, but there was no one to answer. The serpent began to coil its body around the remains of the boat, intending to crush it into splinters. The sound of snapping timber and the splashing of panicked bodies created a horrific symphony. Jeff, in a final act of desperation, pulled a heavy hunting knife and plunged it toward the snake's hide, but the scales were like a suit of armor. The blade bent and slipped from his hand, vanishing into the dark, silted depths. For the first time, the reality of his helplessness hit him. His cunning and his wealth were useless against this prehistoric force. The anaconda tightened its grip. The boat was rapidly being dragged under. Lenny and the other performers leaped into the water in a desperate bid for survival, but it was a fatal mistake. As they hit the water, they realized they were not alone in the dark. While smaller piranhas and insects nipped at them, the real threat was the red demon that was now fully energized in its natural element. The snake surged past Lenny, the sheer force of its wake throwing her several feet away. Jeff clung to a floating piece of the hull, his eyes no longer reflecting greed, but pure, unadulterated terror. He saw Billy Yang in the distance, calmly lighting a cigarette as he watched the bloody spectacle. Could a human being truly fall this low? Could the death of others be a mere entertainment? The darkness of the night was falling fast, and the sounds of the jungle's nocturnal predators grew louder. The anaconda turned its full attention to Jeff. It opened its cavernous maw, revealing rows of recurved teeth that looked like the bars of a biological cage. Jeff closed his eyes, his life flashing before him in a series of jagged images: the people he had stepped on, the lies he had told, the soul he had traded for the promise of gold. But the time for repentance had long since passed. With a sudden lightning-fast strike, the anaconda coiled around Jeff and dragged him into the crushing embrace of the deep. A few bubbles broke the surface, and then silence. Billy Yang started his engine and disappeared into the gloom, convinced he had won. But he forgot one thing. In the Amazon, no predator is ever truly safe. Would the anaconda let him go? Or was Billy Yang merely the next course on the menu? That secret remained buried between the ancient trees and the murky water, where the crimson anaconda still waits, silent and hungry, for the next man with a heart full of greed.